"He's just a single dad," the CEO sneered in a text seconds later. The building shook, walls split open, and the man she mocked became the only one standing between life and death. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the school playground as Ethan Carter knelt beside his daughter Lily. Her bright pink backpack, covered in unicorn stickers, was almost as big as she was. He adjusted the straps carefully, making sure they weren't too tight on her small shoulders. "Got your lunch?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle. Lily patted the side pocket of her backpack. "Yep, PB, J, and apple slices, just like always." "And your reading folder?" She nodded eagerly, her pigtails bouncing. "Miss Thompson says I'm getting really good at chapter books now." Pride swelled in Ethan's chest. Despite everything they'd been through, Lily remained their little ray of sunshine. She had her mother's spirit, bright and unstoppable. "That's my girl." He pulled her close and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'll be back for dinner, okay? We can make those dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets you love. Promise?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Cross my heart." Ethan made an X over his chest, earning a giggle from his daughter. "Dad?" Lily's voice grew serious as she played with the hem of her uniform skirt. "Can we have mac and cheese too? Mom used to make it the best way." The mention of Sarah, his late wife, squeezed Ethan's heart. "Sure thing, sweetheart. We'll make it just like she taught us." After one final hug, Lily skipped toward her waiting teacher. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the building, then headed to his truck. The old Ford had seen better days, but it was reliable, just like him. 20 minutes later, Ethan pulled into the construction site of the Hayes Luxury Living Complex. The half-finished high-rise stretched toward the sky, its steel skeleton gleaming in the morning light. He nodded to Bobby at the security gate, grabbed his hard hat from the passenger seat, and made his way to the site office for the morning briefing. The other workers greeted him with easy familiarity. "Hey, Carter," called Mike from the electrical team. "How's that little girl of yours?" "Growing like a weed," Ethan replied with a smile. "Starting chapter books now." "Smart kid," Mike said. "Takes after her old man." The morning meeting was routine: safety checks, progress reports, and schedule updates. Ethan sat near the back, taking notes in his worn notebook. He'd worked construction for 15 years, learning everything from foundation work to finishing touches. The other guys respected his experience, even if the suits upstairs didn't seem to notice. As the meeting wrapped up, the site supervisor assigned teams to different sections of the building. Ethan's crew was tasked with installing support beams on the 20th floor. They were about to head out when the office door opened, and Madeline Hayes walked in. The room's atmosphere shifted immediately. Madeline commanded attention without trying. Perfectly tailored suit, not a hair out of place, designer heels that somehow navigated the construction site with ease. She was discussing something with her assistant, barely glancing at the workers as they filed past her. Ethan gathered his things, trying to make himself invisible. He'd learned early on that the CEO of Hayes Development preferred to pretend the actual builders of her luxury properties didn't exist. As he moved toward the door, he couldn't help but notice her pulling out her phone, manicured fingers flying across the screen. He didn't mean to look. It was just one of those moments when your eyes catch something they weren't supposed to see. Madeline was texting someone, and her message was clear on the bright screen. "He's just a single dad." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He knew she was talking about him. They'd had a brief interaction yesterday when he'd suggested some safety improvements for the ventilation system. She dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand, barely listening to his explanation. Just a single dad. As if that made him less, somehow. As if raising Lily alone, working 60-hour weeks, and still finding time to volunteer at the local Veterans Center meant nothing. As if the struggle to be both mother and father, to keep their little family going after Sarah's death, was something to look down on. Ethan straightened his shoulders and walked out, refusing to let her words break his spirit. He'd been underestimated before. It didn't matter what Madeline Hayes thought of him, he knew his worth. The morning progressed steadily. Ethan's team worked well together, their movements practiced and efficient. They were making good progress on the support beam installation when the first tremor hit. It started as a low vibration, barely noticeable among the usual construction noise. But then the vibration grew stronger, and a deep rumble echoed through the building's framework. Ethan's years of experience sent warning signals through his body before his mind could even process what was happening. "Everyone off the beams," he shouted, his voice carrying over the growing noise. "Now!" The rumbling intensified. Metal groaned around them, a horrible screeching sound that made Ethan's teeth ache. Emergency alarms began to blare, their harsh wailing adding to the chaos. Workers scrambled for safety as the floor beneath them shuddered violently. Through the confusion of shouts and sirens, Ethan heard the unmistakable sound of concrete cracking. His heart pounded against his ribs as he helped guide his crew toward the emergency stairs. The building swayed beneath them, steel protesting with every movement. The alarms continued their deafening chorus, red emergency lights casting eerie shadows across frightened faces. The rumbling grew louder, and somewhere below them, something made a sound like thunder. The world exploded into chaos. Concrete dust billowed through the air like thick fog, turning day into a ghostly twilight. The acrid taste of pulverized cement filled Ethan's mouth as he sprinted toward the desperate cries echoing through the haze. His steel-toed boots crunched over scattered debris while his heart hammered against his ribs. "Help! Someone, please!" The voice came from his left, choked and frightened. Ethan dropped to his hands and knees, crawling under a partially collapsed section where the ceiling had given way. There, he found Mike and Dave, two of his crew members, pinned beneath fallen support beams. Mike's face was streaked with dust and blood from a cut above his eye, while Dave struggled to free his trapped leg. "Hold on, guys. I've got you." Ethan's muscles strained as he braced his shoulder against the largest beam. Years of construction work had built his strength, but this was different. Lives depended on every ounce of power he could summon. "Dave, when I lift, you pull yourself out. Mike, help him if you can." With a grunt that tore from deep in his chest, Ethan pushed upward. The beam shifted inches, just enough. Dave dragged himself free with Mike's help, wincing as his injured legs scraped across broken concrete. "Mike, your turn." Ethan managed through gritted teeth. Sweat ran down his face, cutting clean trails through the dust coating his skin. Mike scooted out, and Ethan let the beam drop with a thunderous crash. "Thanks, man," Dave gasped, clutching his leg. "We thought we were—" A high-pitched scream cut through the air, stopping Ethan's heart cold. It was a sound he knew too well, the terrified cry of a child. His mind flashed to Lily, safe at school, but this child wasn't safe at all. "Get to the evacuation point," he ordered his co-workers. "I've got to find that kid." Ethan charged through the wreckage toward the lobby, where the screams originated. The space was nearly unrecognizable, shattered glass from the once elegant windows crunched beneath his feet. Water from broken pipes sprayed in erratic bursts, turning dust to mud wherever it fell. Support columns leaned at dangerous angles, and chunks of ceiling continued to rain down. Then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, huddled beneath an overturned desk. She wore a yellow dress now stained gray with dust, and tears cut clean tracks down her face. She must have been visiting with a parent when the collapse began. "Hey there," Ethan called softly, approaching slowly to avoid startling her. "I'm here to help you. What's your name?" Sarah." She hiccuped between sobs. "Hi, Sarah, I'm Ethan. We need to get you out of here, okay?" He reached out his hand. "Can you come to me?" Sarah shook her head, trembling. "I'm scared. The ceiling keeps falling." A sharp crack overhead made them both jump. Ethan looked up to see new fissures spreading across what remained of the lobby ceiling. They were running out of time. Without hesitation, he lunged forward and scooped Sarah into his arms. She clung to his neck as he turned to run, her small body shaking against his chest. The groaning of failing steel grew louder, a sound every construction worker dreaded. Ethan sprinted for the exit, ducking and weaving around fallen debris. His lungs burned from the dust, but he didn't slow down. Behind them, the remaining lobby ceiling gave way with a deafening roar. Through the chaos, he caught a glimpse of Madeline Hayes standing just outside the building's entrance, her usually composed face frozen in horror as she watched the scene unfold. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Gone was the dismissive look she'd worn earlier, replaced by something like awe or disbelief. The rush of falling concrete chased them out the door. Ethan dove forward, shielding Sarah with his body as they hit the ground. Debris rained down around them, but they'd made it clear. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second. Ethan sat up slowly, his body aching from the impact. Blood trickled down his arm from where something had caught him, but he barely noticed. Sarah still clung to him, her face buried against his dust-covered shirt. "You're okay now," he soothed, his voice hoarse. "You're safe." Sarah's small hand found his, squeezing tight as emergency vehicles began to arrive, their lights painting the dusty air in flashing red and blue. The chaos around them continued, shouted orders, more sirens, the sound of fire trucks and ambulances converging on the scene, but Ethan focused only on the tiny hand in his, so much like Lily's, reminding him why every risk had been worth taking. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room cast harsh shadows across Ethan's face as a nurse wrapped gauze around his forearm. His shirt was torn and covered in concrete dust, his hands scraped raw from pulling people to safety. The TV mounted in the corner played footage of the collapse on a loop, showing emergency vehicles surrounding the partially crumbled building. "You're lucky these cuts aren't deeper," the nurse said, securing the bandage, "though you'll definitely be feeling those bruises tomorrow." Ethan managed a tired nod. His whole body ached, but his mind kept replaying the sound of screaming, the horrible groan of twisting metal. He flexed his fingers, wincing at the sting of antiseptic on his torn knuckles. The sharp click of heels against linoleum made him look up. Madeline Hayes stood in the doorway, her normally pristine appearance slightly disheveled. Her designer suit was dusted with concrete powder, and her carefully styled hair had come loose around her face. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty he'd never heard before. "I wanted to thank you personally for what you did today. Your actions were extraordinary." Ethan kept his face neutral, remembering her dismissive words from earlier. "Just doing my job, Miss Hayes." "No." She shook her head, taking a tentative step forward. "What you did went far beyond any job description. You saved lives today. The media is calling you a hero." As if on cue, the TV anchor's voice rose. "In an incredible display of courage, construction worker Ethan Carter rescued multiple people from the collapse, including 8-year-old Tommy Martinez, who was visiting the site with his father." Madeline gestured to the screen. "They want to interview you." "I'd rather go home to my daughter." Ethan's tone was polite but firm. The nurse finished with his bandages and stepped away, leaving them alone. "Of course," Madeline said quickly. "I just thought, perhaps we could discuss what happened. Maybe over coffee?" Ethan stood up slowly, his muscles protesting. Just a single dad probably doesn't have much to contribute to that discussion. Madeline's face paled. "You heard that. Text messages carry pretty far in an empty stairwell." He grabbed his jacket from the chair, ignoring the twinge in his shoulder. "If you'll excuse me, Miss Hayes, I need to pick up my daughter." "Mr. Carter, please." Madeline's composed facade cracked slightly. "What I said was thoughtless and wrong. I'd like to make it right. Some things can't be fixed with coffee and apologies." He moved past her toward the door, then paused. "You might want to look into why that section collapsed. Something felt off about those support beams." He left her standing there, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tightly together. The drive home took longer than usual, with people stopping to stare at his dust-covered truck. When he pulled into his modest driveway, Lily was already running out the front door, their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, hurrying after her. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself into his arms, and Ethan bit back a grunt of pain to catch her. "You're on TV! You're a superhero!" "Easy there, princess." He hugged her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm a little sore." Mrs. Peterson approached, her kind face creased with concern. "We've been watching the news all afternoon. That was quite something you did, Ethan." "Thank you for watching, Lily," he said, setting his daughter down gently. "Of course, dear. There's lasagna in your fridge. Lily helped me make it." After Mrs. Peterson left, Ethan let Lily lead him inside, chattering excitedly about how her whole class had watched him on the classroom TV. She barely let him shower and change before demanding he sit with her on the couch to watch the news coverage again. "See?" Lily pointed at the screen. "That's you carrying Tommy, just like Superman." Ethan smiled tiredly, running his fingers through her soft brown hair. "Not Superman, sweetheart. Just trying to help. But you're brave like Superman." Lily snuggled against his side. "And strong like him, too. Is that why the pretty lady from TV was talking about you?" "What pretty lady?" "The one in the fancy clothes. She said you were a hero, too." Ethan's jaw tightened as footage showed Madeline giving a statement to reporters. He quickly changed the channel to cartoons. Later that night, after dinner and a story, Ethan tucked Lily into her bed, covered with princess sheets. Her room was small but cozy, filled with drawings and stuffed animals. A photo of her mother sat on the nightstand, showing a woman with Lily's same warm smile. "Daddy?" Lily asked sleepily. "Are things going to be different now that you're famous?" Ethan smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Nothing important is going to change, Princess. I promise. Things will get better." The words felt hollow in his mouth, thinking of the investigation that would surely follow, the questions about the collapse, the media attention he didn't want. "Pinky promise?" Lily held up her tiny finger. "Pinky promise." He linked his finger with hers, careful of his bandaged hand. Looking into her trusting eyes, he pushed down his doubts and forced a smile. "Sweet dreams, baby girl." The morning sun cast long shadows across the construction site as Ethan pulled into the parking lot. Yellow caution tape fluttered in the breeze, marking off the collapsed section like crime scene ribbons. His truck's tires crunched over broken concrete as he parked next to the site office trailer. His body still ached from yesterday's rescue efforts. The bandages on his hands caught against the steering wheel as he turned off the engine. Through his windshield he watched a cluster of men in suits and hard hats huddled near the edge of the debris field. Their body language spoke volumes, heads bent close, shoulders tense, voices low. Ethan recognized Tom Wilson, the lead structural engineer, gesturing frantically at a set of blueprints, while two men in dark suits shook their heads. Something about their secretive behavior made his stomach knot. "Morning, hero," called Mike Rodriguez, his longtime co-worker, approaching with 2 paper cups of coffee. He handed one to Ethan as he climbed out of his truck. "How are the battle wounds?" "I'll live," Ethan said, accepting the coffee with a grateful nod. "What's going on over there?" Mike's usually cheerful face turned serious. "Insurance investigators showed up first thing. Been going through everything with a fine-tooth comb." He lowered his voice. "Word is, they found some problems with the support structures. Big problems." Ethan frowned, watching the group of men. Tom Wilson was now pointing up at the exposed steel beams where the building had separated, his face red with apparent frustration. "What kind of problems? Remember those steel grade changes they pushed through last month? Turns out they weren't up to code." Mike took a sip of his coffee, eyes darting around to make sure no one was within earshot. "But that's not even the worst part." A chill ran down Ethan's spine despite the warm morning. "What do you mean?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "You know how this project got fast-tracked? Well, I was talking to Jenny in accounting yesterday. She says a big chunk of the initial funding came through some investment group." He paused, looking at Ethan with concern. "An investment group that handles insurance settlements." Ethan's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "What are you getting at?" "The settlement from Sarah's accident," Mike said quietly, referring to Ethan's late wife. "Jenny says it was rolled into some kind of investment fund that backed this project. She only found out because she was checking the funding sources after the collapse." The coffee cup crumpled in Ethan's grip, hot liquid spilling over his already injured hands. He barely noticed the burn. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Sarah's settlement went into a trust for Lily's college fund." "Part of it did," Mike confirmed. "But the rest? Look, I'm only telling you this because you're my friend. Something's not right here, Ethan. The way they rushed this project, the corners they cut, and now finding out the money trail leads back to Sarah?" Ethan's vision blurred at the edges. The wedding ring he still wore on a chain around his neck suddenly felt heavy against his chest. He pulled it out, the simple gold band catching the morning light. Sarah had always believed in doing what was right, in building things that lasted. The thought that her death might have somehow funded this disaster made him physically ill. Across the site, the group of men broke apart. Tom Wilson stormed toward his truck, while the insurance investigators headed for the site office. The yellow caution tape continued to flutter, marking off not just structural damage now, but something far more personal. "I need to see those funding documents," Ethan said, his voice rough. Mike shook his head. "Jenny said they've already locked down all the files, corporates circling the wagons." He hesitated. "There's more talk going around too, about liability, about who might have known what was happening." Ethan's hand closed around Sarah's ring, the metal warm against his palm. He stared at the broken building, at the place where he'd risked his life to save others, and felt a deep sense of betrayal settle in his chest. This wasn't just about construction shortcuts anymore. This was about Sarah's legacy, about the truth behind her death being twisted into something corrupt. The morning sun continued to rise over the site, but Ethan felt nothing but cold. His fingers tightened around the ring as he looked at the destruction before him, wondering how something meant to honor Sarah's memory could have turned into this nightmare. Mike placed a hand on his shoulder. "What are you going to do?" Ethan stood silent, gripping the ring that represented everything pure and good about his life with Sarah. The twisted metal and broken concrete of the construction site seemed to mock that memory now, turning it into something dark and tainted. The caution tape snapped in a sudden gust of wind, the sharp sound like a whip crack across Ethan's consciousness. He stared at the wreckage, Sarah's ring pressed so tightly into his palm that he could feel every detail of its surface. The old brick church on Maple Street had transformed overnight into a buzzing relief center. Folding tables lined the fellowship hall, stacked with donated clothes, food, and supplies. The stained glass windows cast colorful patterns across the worn wooden floor, where volunteers hustled back and forth with boxes and supplies. Ethan stood at one of the tables, sorting through donated work boots. His daughter Lily sat cross-legged nearby, carefully organizing children's books into neat piles. Her pink sneakers swung back and forth as she worked, humming a tune from her favorite cartoon. "Daddy, look at this one." Lily held up a book with a bright purple cover. "It has a dragon who learns to be brave, just like you." Ethan smiled, his heart warming at her words. "That's great, sweetheart. Make sure it goes in the right pile for the other kids." The church doors creaked open, letting in a shaft of morning light. Heads turned as Madeline Hayes stepped into the hall, looking somewhat out of place in her tailored blazer and heels. She carried a leather portfolio and wore the careful expression of someone trying to navigate unfamiliar territory. "Miss Hayes," Pastor Mike greeted her warmly. "Thank you for coming. The company's donations will help so many families." Madeline nodded, her professional mask firmly in place. "Of course. We want to ensure everyone affected by the incident receives proper support." Ethan kept his head down, focusing on his task. The memory of her dismissive text message still stung, even after everything that had happened. He heard her heels clicking on the wooden floor as she made her way around the hall, speaking with volunteers and checking lists. "Hi." Lily's cheerful voice made Ethan look up. His daughter had abandoned her book sorting and skipped over to where Madeline stood. Madeline's carefully composed expression softened slightly as she looked down at the little girl. "Hello there. I'm Lily," she announced, bouncing on her toes. "Do you want to see the books I organized? I made them all neat and pretty." Before Madeline could respond, Lily grabbed her hand and began pulling her toward the book table. Ethan watched, torn between amusement and discomfort, as his daughter led the powerful CEO across the room like a show-and-tell project. "See?" Lily pointed proudly at her sorted piles. "These are for big kids, and these are for little kids, and these have pictures of animals." "That's very well organized," Madeline said, looking slightly bewildered by the child's enthusiasm. Lily beamed at the praise, still holding Madeline's hand. She looked up at the tall woman with wide, innocent eyes. Something shifted in her expression, that look children get when they're about to share an important secret. "Mommy says you're my daddy," Lily whispered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The words fell like stones in still water. The busy sounds of the relief center, seemed to fade away. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. Madeline went completely still, her face draining of color. Several volunteers nearby stopped what they were doing, glancing between Ethan and Madeline with obvious curiosity. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Madeline's professional composure cracked. She gently pulled her hand from Lily's grasp, taking a step backward. I need to make some calls," she stammered, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. Without meeting anyone's eyes, she turned and quickly walked toward the church doors. Lily watched her go, confusion clouding her small face. "Did I say something wrong, Daddy?" Ethan moved to his daughter's side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong." But his mind was racing. What did Lily mean? Had Sarah, his late wife, said something about Madeline that he didn't know about? "I think we've done enough for today," Ethan said softly. "Let's head home." They said goodbye to Pastor Mike and the other volunteers, some of whom were still stealing curious glances in their direction. Ethan helped Lily into her pink jacket and gathered their things. The walk home was quiet, their footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. The late afternoon sun stretched their shadows long in front of them. Lily skipped ahead occasionally, stopping to examine interesting leaves or pick dandelions growing through cracks in the concrete. Ethan's thoughts tumbled over themselves like stones in a river. His wife's words, spoken through their daughter's innocent voice, seemed to take on new weight with each step. What connection could there possibly be between Sarah and Madeline Hayes? The same Madeline Hayes who had dismissed him as just a single dad only days ago? Lily's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Daddy, can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" "Sure, Princess," he answered automatically, his mind still replaying the scene in the church. The look of shock on Madeline's face, the way she'd fled. There was something there, something he needed to understand. They reached their modest two-story house, its white paint slightly faded but neat. Lily ran up the front steps, her backpack bouncing. Ethan followed more slowly, fishing for his keys. The words echoed in his mind. "Mommy says you're my daddy." Such a simple phrase, spoken with a child's innocence, but carrying the weight of mysteries he couldn't yet understand. As he watched Lily bounce through the front door, chattering about mac and cheese and her favorite books, Ethan wondered what other secrets might be waiting to emerge from the shadows of the past. Ethan's small kitchen felt emptier than usual as he watched Lily color at the dining table. Her innocent words from earlier still echoed in his mind. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The phrase made no sense, yet his daughter had spoken it with such certainty to Madeline Hayes. After tucking Lily into bed with an extra tight hug, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed Mike Thompson's number. If anyone could help him think straight, it was his old army buddy who'd become a private investigator. "Hey, brother." Mike's familiar voice brought comfort through the speaker. "Saw you on the news. Local hero, huh?" Ethan sank into his worn leather armchair. "That's not why I'm calling, Mike. Something weird happened today, and I need your help making sense of it." "Shoot, it's about Sarah." Ethan's voice caught slightly on his late wife's name. "And possibly her connection to Madeline Hayes' family. The CEO from the construction site?" "Yeah." Ethan rubbed his temples. "Lily said something strange to her today. She told Madeline that, 'Mommy says you're my daddy.'" Silence filled the line for a moment. "That's odd. Kids say weird things sometimes, though." "This felt different," Ethan insisted. "And with everything else going on, the building collapse, rumors about Sarah's insurance money being tied to the project somehow." He trailed off, remembering the whispered conversations he'd overheard at the construction site. "Start from the beginning," Mike said. "Tell me everything you know about Sarah's family connections." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Sarah never talked much about her past, said she was estranged from her family, wanted a fresh start. But I remember finding an old photo once, her with a young man. When I asked, she just said he was someone she used to know." "Did she seem upset?" "She changed the subject pretty quick." Ethan stood and paced the kitchen. "Here's the thing. I saw Madeline Hayes talking to her brother at a company event months ago, before he disappeared from the public eye. Something about him seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it." Mike's investigator instincts kicked in. What's his name? James Hayes. Goes by Jimmy. Ethan grabbed a notepad and pen. He was involved in the company's financial dealings until about 6 months ago. Then, poof, gone. Around when Sarah's insurance policy was used to invest in the project? Yeah. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. Mike, what if there's more to this than coincidence? What if Sarah knew Jimmy Hayes somehow? Could explain Lily's comment, Mike mused. Kids pick up on things we don't realize. Maybe she overheard something? Ethan glanced toward Lily's bedroom. Sarah passed when Lily was 4, but she was always talking to her about family, showing her photos. What if? I'll look into it, Mike interrupted gently. Jimmy Hayes' whereabouts, any connection to Sarah's past. Give me a few days. Thanks, Mike. Ethan's eyes landed on Madeline's business card on the counter, her elegant signature sharp against the cream paper. One more thing. Can you check if there's any record of Sarah living in the same areas as the Hayes family? Private schools? Summer camps? Anything? On it. And Ethan? Mike's voice grew serious. Be careful. Corporate types like the Hayes family, they protect their secrets. After hanging up, Ethan stood at the kitchen sink, running water over dishes that didn't need washing. Madeline's business card sat on the counter like a challenge. The woman who'd dismissed him as just a single dad might hold keys to his late wife's past. The thought made his chest tight with a mixture of anger and curiosity. He picked up the card, studying the embossed letters. CEO, Madeline Hayes, Hayes Development Group. The woman whose brother might have known Sarah. The woman his daughter had spoken those bizarre words to. Tomorrow, he decided, he would start asking questions. But tonight, he just listened to Lily's soft breathing from down the hall, wondering what secrets lay buried in his daughter's innocent words. Setting the business card back on the counter, Ethan knew the search for answers was just beginning. His quiet life as just a single dad was about to become much more complicated. The kitchen clock ticked steadily as Ethan dried his hands, each second moving him closer to revelations he wasn't sure he was ready to face. But for Sarah's memory and Lily's future, he had to know the truth. The glass and steel tower loomed over Ethan as he stood at its entrance, his work boots feeling out of place on the polished marble floor. The security guard gave him a once-over before waving him through with a visitor's badge. His reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls showed a man trying his best to look presentable in clean jeans and his least-worn flannel shirt. The elevator opened directly into Madeline Hayes' executive suite. Her assistant, a young woman in a crisp blazer, smiled sympathetically. Miss Hayes is expecting you, Mr. Carter. Right this way. Madeline stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, her silhouette sharp against the city skyline. She turned as Ethan entered, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Thank you for coming, Mr. Carter. Didn't feel like I had much choice, Ethan said, remaining near the door. The office was bigger than his entire apartment, decorated in chrome and glass that probably cost more than he made in a year. Please, sit. Madeline gestured to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. When Ethan didn't move, she sighed. This will be easier if we can talk civilly. Civil? Ethan's jaw tightened. Like when you called me just a single dad? Madeline's perfectly composed expression flickered. I apologized for that comment. No, you thanked me for saving lives. There's a difference. Ethan crossed his arms. Why am I here? Your daughter's words at the relief center. Madeline sat behind her desk, her movements precise. They weren't random, were they? You tell me. Seems like there's a lot about this situation I don't know. What exactly are you implying? My wife's insurance settlement somehow ended up invested in your project. The same project that collapsed because corners were cut, and now my 6-year-old is saying things that don't make sense. Ethan stepped forward, placing his palms on her desk. So yeah, I'm implying plenty. Madeline's eyes narrowed. Be very careful with your accusations, Mr. Carter. I run a legitimate business. Then why are your engineers looking nervous? Why are there whispers about safety violations? Ethan's voice rose. My crew could have died in that collapse. Lower your voice, Madeline snapped, standing to match his posture. You think I don't know that? You think I sleep well knowing what could have happened? I don't know what you think about it all. But I know my wife's memory is tied up in this somehow, and I need answers." Madeline pressed her lips together, then walked to a cabinet and pulled out a thick file. "Your wife's insurance settlement was part of a larger investment package." "My brother?" She paused, something vulnerable crossing her face. "My brother handled those accounts before he disappeared 3 years ago." "Disappeared?" Ethan straightened, surprised by this revelation. "Left without a trace, taking millions in company funds with him." She placed the file on her desk. "I've spent 3 years trying to clean up his mess while keeping the company stable. And my wife knew him? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out." Madeline sat again, suddenly looking tired. "When your daughter said those words, it was like hearing a ghost speak." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, processing. "So what now? We just pretend everything's fine while your company investigates itself?" "No." Madeline's voice was firm. "I want to know the truth as much as you do. More, perhaps. This company is my life's work, and if someone compromised its integrity—" She clenched her fists. "I need to know. And I need to protect my daughter," Ethan countered. "If there's something connecting her mother to all this, then we should work together to find out what at Island." Madeline met his eyes. "I'm not your enemy, Mr. Carter. Whatever my brother did, whatever corners were cut, I want it exposed." Ethan studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. He saw only determination and something else, fear, maybe, or regret. "Fine," he said finally. "But we do this my way too. No corporate cover-ups." "Agreed." Madeline extended her hand across the desk. "Partners?" Ethan hesitated before shaking it. Her grip was firm, her hand cool against his calloused palm. "Partners. For now. I'll have my assistant set up regular meetings. We'll go through everything together, the investment records, the construction reports, everything." "And your brother's disappearance?" A shadow crossed Madeline's face. "That too, though I warn you, that path leads to some dark places." "I've seen dark places before," Ethan said quietly. "I came back from them for Lily. I'll do it again if I have to." Madeline nodded, something like respect showing in her eyes. "We'll start tomorrow then." Ethan turned to leave, pausing at the door to look back. Madeline stood at her window again, her expression guarded as she stared out at the city. In the fading light, she looked less like an untouchable CEO and more like someone carrying a heavy burden. He almost said something else, but thought better of it. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving them both with their own thoughts and suspicions about what tomorrow might bring. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of First Community Church, painting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. Ethan sat in his usual spot, third row from the front, with Lily nestled against his side. Her small hands clutched her children's hymnal while she swung her feet back and forth, her patent leather shoes catching the light. The familiar scent of old wood and fresh flowers filled the air as Pastor Daniel's warm voice carried through the sanctuary. "Today, we're blessed to have our community coming together after such trying times." A movement at the back of the church caught Ethan's attention. His chest tightened as Madeline Hayes slipped quietly through the doors, looking almost uncomfortable in her perfectly tailored cream suit. Several heads turned, but she chose a seat in the last pew, trying to blend into the background. Pastor Daniel's eyes crinkled with a knowing smile. "And speaking of blessings, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge one of our own. Ethan Carter's courage during the recent construction accident wasn't just heroism, it was faith in action." Ethan's neck grew warm as people turned to look at him. Lily beamed up at her father, squeezing his hand with pride. "Sometimes God's angels wear hard hats," Pastor Daniel continued, drawing gentle laughter from the congregation. "Ethan showed us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when guided by love and faith." The organ began to play, and the congregation rose for the next hymn. Ethan lifted Lily onto the pew beside him so she could see better. His deep voice joined the chorus, not perfectly on key, but full of heart. Lily's sweet, clear voice rang out beside him as they sang, "Amazing Grace." From her spot in the back, Madeline watched the father and daughter. Something shifted in her expression. As Ethan helped Lily follow the words with his finger, their heads bent together, sharing quiet whispers between verses. It was a far cry from the construction worker she'd so quickly dismissed. After the service, the congregation filtered into the fellowship hall for coffee and conversation. Ethan was helping set up the refreshment table when Madeline approached, looking as if she wasn't quite sure why she'd stayed. "Mr. Carter?" she said formally, then softened her tone. "I hope you don't mind my being here. I wanted to see how the community outreach efforts were progressing." "Coffee?" Ethan offered, holding up a pot. When she nodded, he reached for a ceramic mug, not the disposable cups most were using. "Cream or sugar?" "Black is fine," she replied, then watched as he filled a second mug. "You don't have to serve me." "I'm not serving you," Ethan said with a slight smile. "I'm serving everyone. That's kind of the point." He handed her the mug, then began arranging cookies on a plate. "Lily, honey, would you please take these to Mrs. Johnson? She can't stand for too long." Lily carefully took the plate of cookies, walking with exaggerated care to an elderly woman seated nearby. Madeline watched as the little girl engaged in animated conversation with the older woman, bringing a smile to both their faces. "Your daughter," Madeline observed. "She's quite special. She's got her mother's heart," Ethan said quietly. He picked up another tray. "Want to help? These muffins need to go on the table by the window." Madeline hesitated, then set down her coffee and took the tray. Together, they worked in comfortable silence, setting out food and refreshing coffee cups. She noticed how Ethan seemed to know everyone's preferences, who needed sugar-free options, which children were allowed sweets, who might need a chair pulled out or a door held open. "You make it look so easy," she commented as they finished up. "All of this, connecting with people." Ethan paused in wiping down the counter. "It's not about making it look easy. It's about making people feel valued." He glanced at her. "Something tells me that's not so different from what you do in your world. Just a different scale." The simple observation caught her off guard. Before she could respond, Lily came bounding back, her dress slightly rumpled and a smudge of chocolate on her cheek. "Daddy, can we show Miss Hayes the garden, please? Mrs. Johnson says the roses are blooming." "If Miss Hayes would like to see it," Ethan said carefully, looking to Madeline. The garden turned out to be a small but well-tended space behind the church. Lily skipped ahead, pointing out her favorite flowers while Ethan named each variety. Madeline found herself drawn into their easy conversation, surprised by how much she was enjoying this simple Sunday morning. "The kids help plant these every spring," Ethan explained, touching a bright marigold. "Teaches them about growth, patience, caring for something bigger than themselves." "Like building something?" Madeline said thoughtfully. "Exactly like that." Their eyes met for a moment before Lily called for their attention, proudly showing off a butterfly that had landed on a nearby bush. When it was time to leave, Madeline walked to her car alone. She sat behind the wheel of her luxury sedan, not yet starting the engine. Through the windshield, she could see Ethan helping an elderly couple to their car, Lily trailing behind with their umbrella just in case of rain. The man she'd dismissed as just a single dad was nothing like the aggressive executives and calculating businessmen she dealt with daily. There was a quiet strength in the way he moved through the world, building community not with grand gestures, but with small acts of kindness and consistency. Her fingers drummed on the steering wheel as she watched him return to the church, stopping to pick up Lily and spin her around, both of them laughing in the Sunday morning Sunday. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through Ethan's modest kitchen window as he checked his watch for the third time. Lily bounced around the kitchen, arranging and rearranging the placemats on their small oak table. "Is Miss Hayes really coming to dinner, Daddy?" Lily asked, smoothing down her favorite blue dress. "Yes, sweetheart. Remember, we're thanking her for helping with the supplies at church." Ethan wiped his hands on a dish towel, trying to hide his own nervousness. The doorbell rang precisely at 6. Lily sprinted to answer it, but Ethan caught her hand. "Wait for me, sunshine." They opened the door together to find Madeline Hayes standing awkwardly on their front porch, holding a store-bought apple pie. "I wasn't sure what to bring," Madeline said, looking oddly vulnerable in casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple cream sweater instead of her usual power suits. "You didn't have to bring anything," Ethan said, stepping back to let her in. "But thank you." Lily tugged at Madeline's sleeve. "Do you like to cook, Miss Hayes?" "I actually don't cook much," Madeline admitted, following them into the kitchen. "My meals usually come from restaurants or my housekeeper." "Then you can help Daddy and me make stew," Lily clapped her hands. "It's my favorite." Ethan noticed Madeline's slight hesitation. "You don't have to—" "No, I'd like to learn," Madeline interrupted, rolling up her sleeves. "Where do we start?" "First, we wash our hands," Lily announced importantly, dragging a kitchen stool to the sink. For the next hour, the kitchen transformed into an impromptu cooking class. Ethan showed Madeline how to chop vegetables, explaining how his mother had taught him this recipe. Lily sat on the counter, safely away from the stove, acting as their enthusiastic supervisor. "The secret is to brown the meat first," Ethan explained, guiding Madeline's hand as she stirred the pot. "It locks in the flavor." "I had no idea cooking could be so involved," Madeline said, her usually perfect hair slightly mussed from the steam. "Daddy says cooking is like building something," Lily chimed in. "You need all the right pieces to make it work." A genuine smile crossed Madeline's face. "Your daddy seems very wise, Lily." As the stew simmered, filling the house with its rich aroma, they set the table together. Lily insisted on using the special cloth napkins they usually saved for holidays. "Miss Maddie, you can sit next to me," Lily declared, patting the chair beside her. Ethan noticed the nickname, and the way Madeline's eyes softened at hearing it. Something in the atmosphere shifted, became warmer, more relaxed. Over dinner, conversation flowed more easily than any of them expected. Lily dominated the discussion, telling stories about school and her friend Emma's new puppy. Madeline listened intently, asking questions that made Lily beam with importance. "This is delicious," Madeline said, helping herself to seconds. "I can't believe I helped make it." "You're a natural," Ethan said, surprising himself with his sincerity. Lily nodded vigorously. "Miss Maddie, you should come cook with us again. We make pizza on Fridays sometimes." "That's very kind of you, Lily," Madeline replied, looking touched by the invitation. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Madeline her art wall, a collection of crayon masterpieces displayed proudly in the hallway. While they were occupied, Ethan started clearing the table, listening to his daughter's excited voice explaining each drawing in detail. "And this one is my family," Lily was saying. "That's Daddy and me and my friend Emma and Mrs. Nelson from next door, and now I can add you too, Miss Maddie." There was a pause, and Ethan heard Madeline's voice, slightly thick with emotion. "I'd be honored to be in your picture, Lily." When they returned to the kitchen, Lily was yawning. "Time for bed, sunshine," Ethan said, checking his watch. "Say goodnight to Miss Maddie." To everyone's surprise, Lily threw her arms around Madeline's waist. "Thank you for helping make stew, Miss Maddie. It was the best dinner ever." Madeline carefully returned the hug, her usually sharp features softened by something that looked like wonder. "Thank you for teaching me, Lily." After Ethan tucked Lily in, he walked Madeline to the door. She paused on the threshold, clutching her car keys. "Thank you, Ethan. This was unexpected, in the best way." "You're welcome any time," he found himself saying, and meaning it. After they left, Ethan stood at the kitchen sink, warm water running over his hands as he washed the dishes. The house felt different somehow, warmer, fuller. He thought about how Madeline had laughed when Lily told jokes during dinner, how she'd rolled up her sleeves without hesitation to help cook, how different she seemed from the CEO who had dismissed him as just a single dad. His wedding ring caught the light as he dried the last pot. For the first time in a long while, the weight of it felt less like an anchor and more like a gentle reminder. Something had shifted tonight, like ice beginning to thaw. He was beginning to trust again, and surprisingly, it didn't feel like betrayal. Ethan's work boots echoed through the vast, empty space of the abandoned community center. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the dusty wooden floor. He walked slowly, his footsteps careful on the creaking boards, as he mentally mapped out his vision for each room. "This could be the counseling area," he murmured to himself, running his hand along a wall marked with old water stains. Despite its worn condition, the building's bones were solid, just like the foundation of hope he wanted to build here. The sound of small feet scampering across the floor broke his concentration. Lily had wandered off to explore another corner of the building, her voice carrying through the empty space. "Daddy! There's a huge room back here." "Stay where I can see you, sunshine," Ethan called back, following her excited voice to what used to be a gymnasium. The high ceiling stretched above them, and basketball hoops hung at either end, their nets long since disappeared. Lily twirled in the center of the room, her arms spread wide. "It's like a castle, Daddy. But it needs lots of cleaning." "That it does." Ethan smiled at her enthusiasm. He could see it too, not a castle, but something just as meaningful. A place where veterans like himself could find support, where single parents could gather for resources and community. A chance to give back to others who were walking the same difficult path he had. The building had been for sale for months, its price dropping steadily as no buyers showed interest. It wasn't in the trendy part of town, and it needed significant work, but that's what made it perfect for his purpose. If only he could secure the funding. "Miss Maddie would love this place," Lily declared, interrupting his thoughts. She had been bringing up Madeline more frequently since their dinner together last week. She could help make it pretty again. Ethan's heart did a familiar skip at the mention of Madeline's name. "I'm sure she's too busy with her own projects, sweetheart." "But she likes helping people now," Lily insisted, skipping across the dusty floor. "She helped at church, remember?" Indeed, he did remember. The image of Madeline Hayes serving coffee in jeans and a casual sweater, her usual corporate armor shed for something more genuine, had stayed with him. Later that afternoon, across town in her sleek office, Madeline sat at her desk reviewing a very different kind of proposal. She'd been quietly gathering information about Ethan's dream project, making discreet calls to potential investors who might be interested in community development. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," she spoke into her phone, her voice professional but warm. "The building has excellent potential for community impact. The proposed Veterans Center would serve a critical need in that area." She paused, listening. "I understand your concerns about the location, but that's precisely why it's perfect. The community needs this." After ending the call, Madeline studied the preliminary budget she'd drafted. Numbers were her comfort zone. They made sense in a way people often didn't. But lately, working with Ethan on the collapse investigation had shown her a different way of measuring value. Her assistant knocked softly before entering. "Miss Hayes? The contractor's report you requested on the old community center building is ready." "Thank you, Sarah." Madeline accepted the folder, then hesitated. "Has anyone mentioned this to Mr. Carter?" "No, ma'am. As requested, we've kept this completely confidential." Madeline nodded, satisfied. She wanted to help, but not in a way that might wound Ethan's pride or make him feel indebted to her. She'd seen enough of his quiet strength to know he wanted to build this dream on his own terms. Back at the old building, Ethan and Lily were preparing to leave. He'd taken measurements and notes, trying to estimate renovation costs that seemed to grow with each calculation. Still, he refused to let go of the vision. "Can we come back tomorrow?" Lily asked as they walked toward the exit. "I want to show Miss Maddie my castle." Ethan chuckled, pulling out the keys the realtor had lent him. "We'll see, sunshine. Remember, this isn't ours yet. But it will be," Lily said with the absolute certainty only a 6-year-old could muster. "And then Miss Maddie can visit all the time. Maybe she could have an office here too." Ethan's hands stilled on the lock. His daughter's innocent wishes struck a chord he'd been trying to ignore. The truth was, Madeline Hayes had been occupying his thoughts more than he cared to admit. Their forced collaboration on the collapse investigation had revealed layers to her he hadn't expected. Compassion beneath the corporate exterior, vulnerability behind the confidence. "Daddy?" Lily tugged at his hand. "Are you thinking about Miss Maddie?" "I'm thinking about a lot of things, sweetheart." He secured the heavy door, checking it twice, a habit from his military days. As they walked to his truck, Lily chattering about her plans for the castle, Ethan took one last look at the building. Despite its current state, he could see its potential so clearly. A place of healing, community, and new beginnings. What he couldn't see was Madeline Hayes in her downtown office, already setting wheels in motion to help make that vision a reality. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the empty parking lot as Ethan helped Lily into her car seat. Unknown to him, several of Madeline's carefully selected investors were already reviewing proposals for what she had termed a vital community rehabilitation project. She had attached Ethan's military service record, his volunteer work history, and preliminary plans for the center. Everything except her own name. Ethan started the truck, his mind already working on the next steps of his plan. The building stood silent behind them, holding both his dreams and Madeline's secret efforts to help them come true. Ethan tugged at his borrowed suit collar, feeling out of place in the grand hotel ballroom. The dark blue fabric felt stiff and formal compared to his usual work clothes, but his friend Mike had insisted on lending it to him for the occasion. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow across elegant table settings and flower arrangements. "Stop fidgeting, Daddy," Lily giggled, reaching up to straighten his tie. She looked like a princess in her new pink dress, her hair done up in careful curls by their elderly neighbor Mrs. Thompson. "You look handsome." "Thanks, sunshine." Ethan smiled down at his daughter, drawing strength from her excitement. "You look beautiful yourself." People filled the ballroom. Construction workers and their families dressed in their Sunday best, corporate executives in designer suits, and community members who had supported the relief efforts. The contrast between the two worlds was stark, but tonight they mingled together, united by the story of heroism that had brought them here. "Mr. Carter," a photographer approached, camera ready. "Could we get a photo of you and your daughter?" Before Ethan could respond, Lily was already posing, beaming at the camera. He knelt beside her, managing a genuine smile despite his discomfort with the attention. The flash went off, capturing the moment. "Ethan." A familiar voice made him turn. Madeline Hayes stood there in an elegant deep green dress, looking somehow softer than her usual corporate appearance. "I'm so glad you came." "Well, it would have been awkward if the guest of honor didn't show up," he joked, trying to ease his nervousness. "Miss Maddie," Lily exclaimed, hugging Madeline's legs. "You look like a queen." Madeline laughed, a real laugh that transformed her usually serious face. "And you, Miss Lily, look absolutely magical." She knelt to admire Lily's dress, treating the little girl's excitement with genuine warmth. The evening progressed with dinner served on fine china, conversations flowing around the tables. Ethan found himself seated at the head table with Lily beside him, while Madeline took her place at the podium for speeches. The room quieted as Madeline tapped her glass for attention. Under the soft lighting, she looked almost vulnerable, different from the icy CEO who had once dismissed him as just a single dad. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice clear but touched with emotion. "We're here tonight to honor extraordinary courage, but more than that, we're here to celebrate the power of family, not just the ones we're born into, but the ones we build through compassion and community." Ethan watched her, struck by the sincerity in her words. This wasn't her usual polished corporate speech. "When I first met Ethan Carter, I made the mistake many of us do, seeing only what was on the surface. A construction worker, a single father." Madeline paused, meeting his eyes across the room. "I couldn't have been more wrong. When crisis struck, Ethan showed us what true strength looks like. He risked everything to save others, not because it was his job, but because that's who he islanded." Lily squeezed Ethan's hand under the table, beaming with pride. "In the weeks since the accident, I've learned what real courage means. It's not just about dramatic rescues, though Ethan certainly showed that kind of bravery. It's about getting up every day, caring for your child, building a better world for others, even when life has dealt you difficult cards." Madeline's voice softened. "It's about having faith in people, in community, in the possibility of second chances." The room was completely silent now, hanging on her every word. Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "So tonight, we honor not just a hero, but a father, a friend, a man who reminds us that family can be found in unexpected places and that courage comes in many forms." Madeline raised her glass. "To Ethan Carter, thank you for teaching us what matters most." The room erupted in applause. Ethan stood, overwhelmed by the standing ovation, by Lily's fierce hug around his waist, by the genuine respect and affection in Madeline's eyes. As the evening moved into dancing, the formal atmosphere relaxed. Lily convinced several executives to twirl her around the dance floor, her laughter infectious. Ethan watched from the side, content to observe until Madeline appeared beside him. "Would you care to dance?" she asked softly, extending her hand. He hesitated only a moment before taking it. "I should warn you, I'm better at building things than dancing. I trust you," she said simply. And those words meant more than any speech could. They moved onto the dance floor as the band played a slow song. Ethan's hand rested carefully on Madeline's waist, her fingers warm in his. They swayed together, finding an easy rhythm. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what you said up there. I meant every word." Madeline met his gaze steadily. "You've changed how I see things, Ethan, how I see what's valuable." From across the room, Lily's delighted clapping caught their attention. She stood with some of the other children, watching them dance with an enormous grin on her face. The sight made both Ethan and Madeline smile. They continued dancing, the space between them comfortable now, filled with possibility rather than tension. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, the music wrapped around them, and for this one perfect moment, everything felt right in Ethan's world. Ethan's phone buzzed incessantly on his nightstand, jolting him awake. The warm glow of yesterday's gala still lingered in his mind. Madeline's speech, their dance, Lily's delighted smile. But as he reached for his phone, that warmth shattered. Missed calls, text messages, news alerts. His stomach dropped as he read the headline, "Negligence suspected in luxury high, Rise Collops, Site Supervisor Ethan Carter under investigation." "No," he whispered, fingers trembling as he opened the full article. There it was, in bold print, his name dragged through accusations of overlooked safety protocols and ignored warning signs. A leaked preliminary report painted him as the culprit behind the near tragedy. He scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. More messages flooded in. "Mike, man, what's going on?" Jorge from the site. "How could you?" His supervisor. "Don't come in today. Pending investigation." Lily's cheerful humming drifted from the kitchen where Mrs. Thompson was helping her with breakfast. The sound twisted his gut. How would he explain this to his little girl? His phone rang. Madeline's name flashed on the screen. He answered, throat tight. "Ethan." Her voice was strained. "I just saw—" "Did you know?" He cut in, voice low and harsh. "Did you know this was coming?" "No, I swear. I had no idea. The board called an emergency meeting. They're saying I'm responsible." Ethan pressed his forehead against the cool window glass. "That I ignored safety protocols. His voice cracked. "That I put everyone at risk." "It's not true," Madeline insisted. "We both know it's not true. Let me help. I can—" A text notification interrupted, a message from his crew's group chat. "Traitor. Knew we couldn't trust the boss's pet." The words blurred as his eyes burned. "Ethan, are you there? I trusted you," he managed. "After everything, your text about me being just a single dad, the way you looked down on me, I still let myself trust you. Please." Madeline's voice wavered. "The board is pressuring me to distance the company from you, but I won't. We can fight this together." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Distance yourself? Isn't that what you do best? Keeping everyone at arm's length in your corporate tower? That's not fair." Her professional facade cracked. "I've changed. You know I have." "Daddy?" Lily appeared in his doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Why do you look sad?" Ethan's heart clenched. He covered the phone. "It's nothing, sunshine. Go finish your breakfast with Mrs. Thompson." But Lily's eyes were fixed on the TV in the living room, where a news ticker scrolled beneath his photo. Her lower lip trembled. "Why are they saying mean things about you?" "I have to go," he told Madeline. "Wait. The board wants me to sign a statement condemning—" "Then sign it," he snapped. "Protect your precious company. That's what matters most, right?" He ended the call and sank to his knees, opening his arms to Lily, who ran into them. She buried her face in his neck. "You're a hero, Daddy. They're wrong." His phone kept buzzing. More news alerts. More accusations. A photo from last night's gala showed him dancing with Madeline, the caption insinuating corruption and favoritism. Everything good and hopeful from that evening now felt tainted. The doorbell rang. Through the window he saw reporters gathering on his small lawn. Mrs. Thompson peeked out the kitchen curtains, muttering under her breath. His crew foreman's number flashed on his phone. With trembling fingers, he answered. "Carter." The gruff voice held none of its usual warmth. "The guys are asking questions. That report. There's stuff in there only someone on site would know. You think I had something to do with the collapse?" Ethan's voice was hollow. "After I pulled people out? I don't know what to think anymore." A heavy sigh. "Stay away from the site for now. It's better for everyone." The call ended. Ethan held Lily tighter, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo, trying to anchor himself. His phone chimed with a text from Madeline. "Emergency press conference at 10 a.m. Please come. Let me help explain." Another message followed. "The board is threatening to remove me if I don't comply. But I won't abandon you." Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd heard promises before, from his wife's doctors, from insurance companies, from people who claimed to care. In the end, he'd faced everything alone. Mrs. Thompson appeared in the doorway, her kind face tight with concern. "I'll take Lily to my place, away from those vultures outside. You do what you need to do, dear." Ethan nodded gratefully. He kissed Lily's forehead. "Go with Mrs. Thompson, Sunshine. Daddy needs to fix something. Will you be okay?" Her small hands framed his face, so trusting, so sure of him. "Always am, aren't I?" He managed a smile he didn't feel. After they left through the back door, Ethan changed into jeans and his work boots. One more text from Madeline. "Please, trust me." He grabbed his keys and his late wife's wedding ring on its chain. The reporters surged forward as he opened his front door, shouting questions about negligence and corruption. He pushed through them silently, got in his truck. The drive to Hayes Development headquarters passed in a blur. Security waved him through. They hadn't received word to stop him yet. In the lobby, a crowd of reporters and cameras waited. Through the glass doors, he saw Madeline at a podium, her board members flanking her like guards. Their eyes met across the space. For a moment he saw the woman who danced with him last night, who'd taught his daughter to make cookies, who'd seemed to understand his dreams of helping others. But then he saw her hand shake as she gripped a prepared statement. Saw the board chairman whisper in her ear. Saw her mask of corporate authority slip back into place. Ethan turned away. Behind him, he heard the glass doors open, heard Madeline call his name. "I should have known better than to trust," he whispered, and walked away into the morning Sunday. The blinds stayed drawn in Ethan's small house, casting shadows across the living room where he sat in his father's old armchair. 3 days had passed since the accusations hit the news. 3 days of ignored calls, unopened mail, and reporters camping outside until the police finally shooed them away. Mrs. Thompson had taken Lily to school again this morning, saving him from facing the whispers and stares of other parents. The elderly neighbor's kindness only made his chest ache more. He didn't deserve help. Not when everyone thought he'd endangered lives. The TV stayed off. He couldn't bear to see his face splashed across the morning shows, couldn't stomach watching experts pick apart his every decision at the construction site. His phone lay silent on the coffee table, battery dead for the past day. He hadn't bothered to charge it. Pictures lined the walls. Lily's kindergarten graduation, family camping trips, his late wife's gentle smile. The memories that once brought comfort now felt like accusations. Had he failed them all? The front door creaked open, and Lily's footsteps pattered across the floor. "Daddy, I drew you something in art class." Ethan forced himself to sit straighter, to soften his expression. "That's great, Sunshine." She climbed onto his lap, paper clutched in her small hands. The crayon drawing showed 3 figures: himself in a construction hat, Lily holding flowers, and a tall woman in a blue dress who could only be Madeline. Above them, a rainbow stretched across the page. "Miss Jenny says rainbows mean hope," Lily explained, pointing to her artwork. "And see, we're all smiling." The innocent optimism in her voice made his throat tight. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put it on the fridge, next to my spelling test?" "Of course." But he didn't move. The energy required to stand, to walk those few steps to the kitchen, felt overwhelming. Mrs. Thompson appeared in the doorway, her kind face creased with worry. "There's fresh coffee in the pot, Ethan, and I picked up some groceries, just some basics." He nodded, shame burning in his gut. He should be the one providing, not accepting charity from a widow on a fixed income. "And," she hesitated, "Miss Hayes stopped by the school today. She asked about you both." Ethan's jaw clenched. The memory of their last conversation stung. Her promises to help. Her insistence that she could fix things. Empty words from someone who lived in a different world. "What did Madeline say?" Lily perked up, eyes bright with hope. "She just wanted to make sure you were okay, dear." Mrs. Thompson's voice softened. "She seemed different. Tired, maybe." Ethan barely heard the rest of their conversation. His mind drifted to the dance they'd shared at the gala, how right it had felt to hold her, to imagine a future where his daughter had a mother again. Now those dreams felt like cruel jokes. After Mrs. Thompson left, Lily tried to coax him into playing her favorite board game. "Please, Daddy, you always make the best monster voices when we play." "Not today, sunshine. Daddy's got a headache." She slumped, lower lip trembling. "That's what you said yesterday, and the day before." Guilt twisted his stomach. He was failing her too, letting his pain dim her natural brightness. But he couldn't summon the energy to pretend everything was fine. Across town, in her stark modern apartment, Madeline sat alone at her dining table. Her designer briefcase, the one she'd carried proudly into board meetings for years, lay empty beside a half-drunk glass of wine. The letter from Human Resources felt heavy in her hands. "Regret to inform you that your employment is terminated, effective immediately." She'd known it was coming. Had seen it in the board members' cold eyes when she'd refused to sign the statement condemning Ethan. They'd called her emotional, compromised, unsuitable for leadership. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her brother. First time in years, probably hoping to capitalize on her downfall. She ignored it. The sun set, painting orange streaks across her pristine white walls. She'd achieved everything she'd ever wanted in this corporate world. The corner office, the respect, the power to make decisions that mattered. Now, it felt hollow. Back at Ethan's house, Lily knelt beside her bed for nighttime prayers. He lingered in the doorway, watching her fold her small hands and bow her head. "Dear God," she began, voice clear and earnest, "please make Daddy smile again. He's the bravest daddy in the whole world, and the people on TV are wrong about him. And please help Miss Maddie too, 'cause she looks sad when she brings flowers to my school. And maybe," she peeked up at him, "maybe you could help them both remember how to be happy, like at the party where they danced?" Ethan's eyes burned. He stepped back into the hallway, pressing his fist against his mouth to hold back a sob. "Amen," Lily finished softly. She crawled under her covers, hugging her stuffed rabbit close. "Daddy, will you tell me a bedtime story?" He wanted to. God, how he wanted to be the father she deserved. But the words stuck in his throat, tangled with grief and shame and anger. "Not tonight, sunshine. Try to get some sleep." Her small face fell, but she nodded bravely. "Okay, I love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby." He closed her door halfway, leaving the nightlight's warm glow to chase away shadows. In the darkness of the hallway, he slid down the wall until he sat on the floor, head in his hands. Through the thin walls, he heard Lily's quiet voice singing to herself, the lullaby her mother used to sing, slightly off-key but full of hope. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The simple melody drifted through the silent house, a reminder of everything he stood to lose. The autumn morning hung cold and gray as Ethan's boots crunched through fallen leaves. The cemetery stretched quiet before him, headstones standing like silent sentinels in the early light. His wife's grave marker was simple just as she would have wanted it. Sarah Carter, beloved wife and mother, the dates of her too short life etched in stone. Ethan knelt, his knees pressing into the damp earth. He traced her name with trembling fingers, his throat tight. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing better, being stronger for Lily. But now," his voice cracked, "now everything's falling apart." The weight of the past weeks crashed over him. The building collapse, the accusations, the betrayal, he felt it all spilled out in a torrent of words. "They're saying I'm responsible. That I failed. Maybe they're right. Maybe I have failed. Failed you, failed Lily, failed everyone who counted on me." Tears he'd been holding back finally broke free, dropping onto the granite. "I don't know what to do anymore. Lily needs me to be strong, but I feel so." He pressed his forehead against the cool stone. "Lost. I feel lost without you." The sound of approaching footsteps made him stiffen, but he didn't turn around. He knew those measured steps, the slight drag of the left foot, a reminder of old war wounds. "Thought I might find you here," came the gruff voice of Mike Henderson, his former squad leader and longtime friend. The older veteran eased himself down onto a nearby bench, his silver hair catching the weak sunlight. Ethan stayed silent, his hand still resting on Sarah's headstone. "You know what Sarah would say if she saw you like this?" Mike asked quietly. A sad smile touched Ethan's lips. "She'd probably kick my butt." "Damn straight she would." Mike leaned forward, his weathered face serious. "Remember what we learned in the service, son? When you're pinned down, when everything's going to hell, what do? Assess, adapt, overcome." The words came automatically, drilled into him through years of training. "That's right." Mike's voice grew softer. "You're not done, Ethan. Not by a long shot. That little girl of yours? She needs her daddy to stand up, dust off, and fight back." Ethan finally turned to face his old friend. "How? The evidence is garbage and you know it?" Mike cut in. "Since when does Ethan Carter cut corners on safety? Since when does he put his men at risk?" He shook his head firmly. "Someone's playing a game here, son. Question is, are you going to let them win?" The words hit home, stirring something in Ethan's chest, a familiar fire he'd almost forgotten. He looked back at Sarah's grave, remembering her strength, her unwavering faith in him. She'd never let him give up, not when things got tough. "I've been wallowing," Ethan admitted quietly. "You have," Mike agreed without judgment. "And maybe you needed to for a bit. But now it's time to get back up." A cool breeze rustled through the cemetery, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. Ethan closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. He thought of Lily's prayers at night, asking God to make her daddy smile again. He thought of the community center dream, of all the other single parents and veterans who needed help. "Sarah always said faith without action is dead," Ethan murmured. Mike nodded. "Smart woman, you're Sarah." Ethan stood slowly, his hand lingering one last moment on the headstone. "I need to clear my name, not just for me, but for Lily, for everyone who believed in me." Now that sounds more like the Ethan Carter I know. Mike got to his feet with a slight grimace. "And you're not in this fight alone, son. Never were." They walked together through the cemetery, their footsteps crunching in sync. At the gate, Mike stopped and gripped Ethan's shoulder. "Go home to your little girl. Show her that her daddy's still standing." Ethan nodded, grateful for the older man's wisdom and presence. The drive home felt different somehow, as if a weight had begun to lift. Not completely, there were still battles ahead, but enough to breathe again. He found Lily in the backyard, her small face serious as she arranged her stuffed animals in a circle. She looked up as he approached, hope and worry mixed in her big eyes. "Daddy?" she asked softly. Ethan lifted her into his arms, holding her close. Her arms wrapped around his neck, and he felt her relax against him, his brave little girl who'd been trying so hard to be strong for him. "We're not done yet," he whispered into her hair, feeling her squeeze him tighter in response. The streetlights cast long shadows across the empty diner parking lot as Madeline's car pulled in just after midnight. She'd chosen this place carefully, a small truck stop on the outskirts of town where corporate suits never ventured. Through the window she could see Ethan already inside, sitting in a corner booth with his shoulders hunched over a cup of coffee. Her heels clicked against the cracked linoleum as she made her way to his table. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere in the kitchen a radio played old country music. Only 2 other customers occupied the diner, both truckers focused on their late-night meals. "Thank you for meeting me," Madeline said softly, sliding into the booth across from him. Her designer clothes looked out of place against the worn vinyl seats. Ethan barely looked up. "You said you had something important." His voice was flat, guarded. Madeline reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I do." She glanced around before continuing in a hushed tone. "After they fired me, I did some digging, a lot of digging." This caught Ethan's attention. His eyes lifted to meet hers. "They fired you? For refusing to throw you under the bus." She smoothed her skirt, a nervous habit. "Turns out, that was the best thing that could have happened. It gave me time to follow the money trail." She opened the envelope and carefully spread several documents across the table. Ethan leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. Spreadsheets, emails, and inspection reports covered the scratched Formica surface. "Look at these dates," Madeline pointed to a series of entries. "The board approved cheaper materials 3 months before construction began. They knew the risks." Ethan's jaw tightened as he studied the numbers. "These, safety ratings. They're well below code." "Exactly." Madeline pulled out another document. "And this email chain shows they were fully aware. They calculated the cost savings against potential lawsuit settlements." Her voice cracked with disgust. "They literally put a price on people's lives." The coffee cup rattled as Ethan's hand trembled with anger. "My crew trusted them, we all did. There's more." Madeline hesitated before continuing. "Remember how your wife's insurance settlement was partially invested in the project?" Ethan nodded stiffly. "I found out why." She pulled out another paper. "My brother, the one who knew your wife. He was working as a financial advisor at the time. He tried to warn the board about the safety issues, but they threatened to expose some of his questionable investment practices if he spoke up." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "That's why he disappeared." "Yes, and your wife's investment. It wasn't coincidence. The board deliberately targeted grieving families for funding, knowing they'd be less likely to ask tough questions." Madeline's voice shook, with barely contained rage. "They preyed on people at their most vulnerable." Ethan pushed back from the table, running his hands through his hair. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the manipulation pressed down on him. But beneath the anger, something else stirred. Hope. Finally, answers. "We can prove it," Madeline continued, her professional demeanor cracking to reveal fierce determination. "All of it. The falsified inspection reports, the fraudulent investments, the cover-up, everything." "Why are you doing this?" Ethan asked quietly. "You've already lost your job, your reputation." Madeline was quiet for a moment, absently straightening the papers. "Because you were right about me, that first day. I was cold, dismissive. I saw people as numbers on a spreadsheet." She met his gaze. "But watching you run into that building, seeing how you care for Lily, how you help others without expecting anything in return, it changed something in me." The ancient coffee maker behind the counter sputtered and hissed in the silence that followed. Finally, Ethan spoke. "What's our next step?" "We take this to the district attorney." Madeline tapped the documents. "But we'll need your help. Your testimony about the actual construction conditions, combined with these documents, could bring down the entire board." "It won't be easy," Ethan warned. "They have expensive lawyers, connections." "I know." Madeline's lips curved in a determined smile. "But we have something they don't." "What's that?" "The truth, and nothing to lose." Ethan studied her for a long moment, seeing not the polished CEO who had once dismissed him, but a woman willing to sacrifice everything to do what was right. He extended his hand across the table. "Partners?" he asked. Madeline grasped his hand firmly. "Partners." Their handshake sealed more than just an alliance. It was a promise to fight for justice, to clear Ethan's name, and perhaps to build something new from the rubble of what had fallen. The mahogany-paneled boardroom felt smaller than Ethan remembered. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the anxious faces of board members seated around the massive table. His work boots felt out of place on the plush carpet, but he stood straight-backed and resolute. Madeline stood beside him, her usual designer suit replaced by a simple black blazer and skirt. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights spent gathering evidence, but her voice rang clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, what you're about to see will change everything." She clicked the remote, and the projection screen filled with damning emails and doctored safety reports. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. "These documents," Madeline continued, "show a pattern of willful negligence. Safety protocols weren't just bent, they were broken." She laid out a timeline of corrupted inspections, falsified certifications, and diverted funds. Board member Thompson, red-faced and sweating, interrupted. "This is preposterous. You can't possibly—" "Actually, we can," Ethan cut in, his voice steady. He pulled out a worn notebook. "My late wife kept detailed records of every investment meeting, including the one where you, Mr. Thompson, promised her insurance money would fund additional safety measures." His fingers traced the familiar handwriting. "Instead, that money lined someone else's pockets." The room fell silent. Madeline clicked to the next slide, revealing bank transfers and shell companies. "The collapse wasn't an accident," she declared. "It was the inevitable result of greed." Workers began filing into the back of the room, men and women Ethan had worked alongside for years. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their presence a testament to truth. Thompson's face turned purple. "Security! Remove these people at once!" "I wouldn't," Madeline warned. "The press is waiting outside. And the SEC has already received copies of everything you see here." The board chairman, an elderly man named Davidson, removed his glasses slowly. "These accusations, if true—" "They're true," called out Jenkins, a senior engineer who stepped forward from the crowd. "I tried reporting safety concerns 3 times. Each report disappeared." More voices joined in. Workers shared stories of warnings ignored, corners cut, lives endangered. Each testimony drove another nail into the coffin of corporate denial. Ethan watched Thompson's composure crumble as the truth emerged. The man who'd accused him of negligence now couldn't meet his eyes. "Mr. Carter," Davidson addressed Ethan directly, "it appears we owe you more than one apology. Your actions during the collapse saved lives that our negligence put at risk." The chairman turned to address the entire room. "Effective immediately, I'm calling for the resignation of all board members involved in this cover-up. A full investigation will follow." A spontaneous cheer erupted from the workers. Ethan felt hands patting his back, heard thank yous and congratulations. But his eyes sought Madeline. She stood apart from the celebration, gathering her documents with trembling hands. The victory had cost her everything she'd worked for: her position, her reputation in corporate circles, perhaps her entire career. Yet her shoulders were straight, her head held high. "Miss Hayes," Davidson called out, "while your methods were unorthodox, your integrity is commendable. The board will remember this." Madeline nodded once, professionally, but Ethan saw the emotion she fought to contain. She'd sacrificed everything for the truth. The workers parted as Madeline walked toward the door. Some nodded respectfully. Others, who'd once viewed her as the enemy, saw her differently now. She'd chosen justice over power, truth over profit. Sunlight spilled through the opening door as Madeline stepped outside. For the first time in years, her smile wasn't practiced or polished. It was real, radiant with the simple joy of doing what was right. The morning light caught her face, and in that moment she looked more beautiful than in all her years of corporate success. It was the beauty of authenticity, of choosing truth, no matter the cost. She closed her eyes, turned her face to the sun, and simply smiled. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings as crowds gathered outside the renovated brick building. Banners fluttered in the wind, announcing Carter Community Center, a home for heroes and hope. The morning sun painted everything in a warm, golden light, making the freshly polished windows sparkle. Ethan Carter stood at the entrance, his work-worn hands smoothing down his clean flannel shirt. For once, his usual construction gear was replaced with his best clothes, though he'd kept his steel-toed boots polished to a shine. His eyes swept over the gathered crowd, veterans in their service caps, single parents holding their children's hands, and neighbors who'd supported his dream from the start. 6-year-old Lily bounced beside him in her favorite yellow dress, her dark curls tied back with matching ribbons. "Daddy, look at all the people!" she whispered excitedly, tugging at his sleeve. "Even Mr. Peterson from the grocery store came." "Sure did, sweetheart," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. He spotted familiar faces from the construction site, his church congregation, and even some of the families he'd helped during the building collapse. Each person represented a thread in the tapestry of community that had carried him through his darkest days. Madeline Hayes approached from the parking lot, trading her usual corporate suits for an elegant blue dress that matched her eyes. She carried a stack of papers, last-minute details she'd insisted on handling personally. Since leaving her CEO position, she'd thrown herself into this project with the same determination that had once driven her corporate career, but now her sharp edges had softened into something warmer. "Everything's ready," she said, reaching them. Her smile, once rare, now came easily. "The contractors finished the playground installation this morning." Lily immediately grabbed Madeline's free hand, forming a bridge between the adults. The simple gesture made Madeline's eyes shine with unshed tears. Mayor Thompson stepped forward with a large pair of ceremonial scissors, their blades gleaming in the sunlight. "Shall we begin?" Ethan cleared his throat and faced the crowd. The microphone picked up his deep voice, carrying it across the gathered faces. "A few months ago, I stood in the rubble of a collapsed building, thinking everything was lost. But today, we're standing in front of something built not just with bricks and mortar, but with hope and community." He glanced at Madeline, who nodded encouragingly. None of this would be possible without Madeline Hayes. When everyone else walked away, she stayed. She believed in this dream and invested not just her money, but her heart. His voice softened. "She showed me that sometimes family isn't just what you're born with, it's also what you build together." Madeline stepped forward, her professional composure cracking slightly as she spoke. "This center represents everything I once thought didn't matter, in business, community, compassion, and connection. Ethan and Lily taught me that true success isn't measured in profit margins, but in the lives we touch." She squeezed Lily's hand. "They showed me what family really means." The crowd murmured appreciatively, and several veterans nodded in understanding. Mrs. Rodriguez, a single mother Ethan had helped after the collapse, wiped tears from her eyes. "This place," Ethan continued, gesturing to the building, "will be a home for veterans finding their way back to civilian life, for single parents needing support and community, for children who need a safe place to play and grow, for anyone who needs to remember they're not alone." Lily tugged at both their hands, and they bent down to her level. "Can I say something too?" she whispered loudly enough for the microphone to catch. The crowd chuckled warmly. Ethan lifted her up so she could reach the microphone. "Hi, everyone," she said brightly. "Thank you for coming to our new home. Daddy says it's a place where broken hearts can heal, just like ours did." Madeline's breath caught audibly, and Ethan's eyes glistened. The crowd's collective heart seemed to melt at Lily's words. Mayor Thompson stepped forward with the scissors. "Would you like to do the honors together?" Ethan, Madeline, and Lily positioned themselves before the red ribbon. Together their hands guided the scissors, and with a satisfying snip, the ribbon fell away. Applause erupted from the crowd, mixed with cheers and a few wolf whistles from Ethan's construction crew friends. As people began filing into the building for tours, Lily kept her grip on both Ethan and Madeline's hands. Her face glowed with pure joy as she looked up at them both. "Now I have a mommy and a daddy," she whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. The words settled in the air between them like a blessing. Ethan and Madeline's eyes met over Lily's head, years of loneliness and searching reflected in their shared gaze. Around them, families streamed into the center, their voices filled with excitement and hope. Children ran toward the new playground, their laughter carrying on the autumn breeze. Veterans gathered in groups, sharing stories and newfound brotherhood. Single parents introduced themselves to each other, already forming connections. The crowd's cheers echoed off the building's walls, celebrating not just the opening of a new center, but the birth of a new family and the power of a community coming together. The morning sun continued to shine, blessing this new beginning with its golden light. Golden rays of autumn sunlight filtered through the changing leaves, casting dappled shadows on the checkered blanket spread beneath an old oak tree. The park buzzed with distant children's laughter and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. Ethan Carter leaned back against the tree trunk, watching as his daughter Lily arranged her stuffed animals around their picnic spread. Madeline Hayes sat cross-legged on the blanket, her usually perfect business attire replaced by comfortable jeans and a soft sweater. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with contentment as she unpacked their picnic basket. Gone was the icy CEO who had once dismissed Ethan as just a single dad. In her place sat a woman who had learned that life's richest rewards couldn't be measured in profit margins. "Miss Maddie, can Mr. Bear have some of your famous cookies?" Lily asked, holding up her worn teddy bear with hopeful eyes. Madeline laughed, a sound that still surprised her with its ease. "Of course, sweetheart, but don't tell him they're store-bought this time." She winked at Ethan. "I'm still working on my baking skills. They're better than my first attempts." Ethan chuckled, reaching for a sandwich. "Remember the rock-hard muffins I made when you first came for dinner? How could I forget? I think we could have used them as building materials for the community center." Madeline's eyes crinkled with mirth as she passed paper plates around. Lily giggled, arranging her teddy bear's cookie just so. "Daddy makes the best grilled cheese now, though. Miss Maddie taught him the secret ingredient." "Love?" Ethan suggested, his eyes meeting Madeline's. "Actually, it's butter," Madeline corrected with a grin, but the warmth in her gaze said he wasn't entirely wrong. A comfortable silence fell as they enjoyed their meal. The afternoon sun painted everything in honey gold tones, and the air carried the crisp scent of autumn. Ethan watched as Madeline helped Lily cut her sandwich into triangles, just the way she liked it. The simple gesture made his heart swell. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said softly, almost to himself. Madeline looked up, understanding in her eyes. "What's that?" "This," he gestured to their little group. "Peace. Family. The feeling that everything's gonna be okay." He reached out and squeezed her hand. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I focused on surviving, on being strong for Lily." Lily, absorbed in feeding her stuffed animals, hummed a little tune to herself, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "I know what you mean," Madeline replied, her voice gentle. "I spent so many years thinking success meant corner offices and board meetings. I was so focused on climbing higher that I forgot to look around and see what I was missing." "And now?" Ethan asked, though he knew the answer in her smile. "Now I measure success differently." She watched as Lily arranged cookie crumbs in a pattern on her plate. "It's in the thank you notes from veterans at the community center. It's in the single moms who finally have a safe place for their kids after school. It's in moments like this." Lily looked up from her artwork of crumbs. "And in cooking lessons," she added brightly. "Miss Maddie's getting really good at pancakes now." "That's right, sweet pea." Ethan laughed, pulling his daughter onto his lap. "Though we might need a few more Sunday morning practice sessions. I'm willing to keep trying if you're willing to keep teaching," Madeline said, her eyes soft with affection. The afternoon light began to mellow, turning the sky to shades of pink and gold. A cool breeze rustled the leaves above them, sending a few early fallen leaves dancing across their blanket. Lily caught one, holding it up to examine its changing colors. "Look, it's like a painting," she declared, showing it to both adults. "Beautiful," Madeline agreed, helping Lily add it to her growing collection of treasures. Ethan watched them, his heart full. The woman who had once seemed so unreachable was now teaching his daughter about leaf patterns and autumn colors. The same hands that had signed corporate contracts now gently braided Lily's hair and kneaded bread dough in their kitchen. He remembered the day of the building collapse, how the world had seemed to crumble around him in more ways than one. Yet from those ruins, something stronger had grown. The community center stood as a testament to resilience, but these quiet moments of shared joy, was the real miracle. Madeline shifted closer, settling against his side as if she belonged there. And she did, he realized. She belonged in their story, in their family, in their life. Lily snuggled into both of them, creating a perfect moment of connection. "We should do this every Sunday," Lily declared, playing with the charm bracelet on Madeline's wrist, a gift from Ethan that replaced her expensive designer watches. "I'd like that," Madeline said softly, meeting Ethan's gaze. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, as if nature itself was celebrating their joy. Ethan wrapped an arm around Madeline, holding Lily close on his lap. All the struggles, the pain, the doubts, they had led to this moment. "We're not just surviving anymore," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're living." The words hung in the golden air, a simple truth that encompassed everything they'd found together. The path hadn't been easy, but sitting here, surrounded by love and peace, Ethan knew every step had been worth it. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.